I know I'm the last person in the world to make a top 10 list for the best movies of 2023, but today is Oscar Sunday, so I actually think today is the perfect day to talk about my favorite features of last year. Of course, there were a handful of movies that didn't quite make the cut into my top 10 list, so my honorable mentions include American Fiction, The Artifice Girl, The Creator, Dumb Money, The Holdovers, The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, The Iron Claw, Poor Things, Saw X, Society of the Snow, and Talk to Me. But without any further ado, my official favorite movies of the year list, in alphabetical order of course, begins with Air. Sure, it may be easy to dismiss a film that is based on the creation of a shoe, but Air is less about the Air Jordan shoe itself and more about how one man single-handedly saved Nike by never giving up on his dream to sign Michael Jordan. Because dreams are powerful things, and it takes a lot of hard work, dedication, luck, and crazy-ass decisions to make a dream become a reality. But Jordan's deal with Nike changed the business of sportswear forever, so sometimes it really does pay off to make your dreams come true. But as someone who doesn't know anything about basketball or shoes or basketball shoes, I was able to enjoy this movie due to Ben Affleck's entertaining sense of direction and Matt Damon's endearing performance. Because I absolutely love when these two creatives get to collaborate together, and I do hope that they get to team up on more movie projects in the future. Anatomy of a Fall. This movie is a really smart and really effective courtroom drama, and it managed to keep my engagement throughout the entirety of its runtime. Because the story being told is rather thought-provoking, and it will make you question your own pre-existing beliefs about the characters in it. You may even be surprised to find that other people will reach different conclusions than you did based on the same evidence that was provided in the film. Which may be frustrating to some viewers, but I like being able to debate my opinions with other people who have seen the film. Plus, the performances in this movie are out-fucking-standing, so it's easy to be engaged with the story being told by this movie. So, with an interesting story, well-written characters, wonderfully grounded performances, and powerfully strong themes to boast, it's easy to see why Anatomy of a Fall is considered by many to be one of the best movies of the year. Blackberry. This is a movie that makes for a perfect double feature when paired with Air. Because while Air tells an uplifting story about the rise of a company, Blackberry tells a more pessimistic tale that focuses on the rise and fall of a company, which makes for a completely different kind of movie with a much darker tone and a much sadder ending when compared to something like Air. Because while plenty of people still buy Nike shoes, nobody, and I mean nobody, is buying BlackBerry phones. But it was really interesting to watch the story of BlackBerry's inception, rise to dominance, and inevitable downfall. It really makes for an entertaining film that really stands apart from all of the other brand name properties that have been getting released lately. So, despite the film's more nihilistic tone, Blackberry is a really fun and insightful movie that I happen to thoroughly enjoy. Godzilla Minus One. If it wasn't for another movie that I have yet to get to on this list, Godzilla Minus One would definitely be my favorite film of the year. Because Godzilla Minus One is so much more than just a regular monster movie. It's a complex and mature look at post-war Japan, one that explores how Japanese citizens viewed their role in World War II, and how that view may have changed in the generations that have passed since the war. It shows us that people can love their country and be patriotic without needing to entrust everything to their government. The story itself is about grief and loss and regret and survivor's guilt, which makes for an excellent drama filled with well-rounded characters. And Godzilla just so happens to be there. But when Godzilla does show up, the movie is just so much better. So, as a huge fan of the iconic monster, I have to say that this is easily the best Godzilla movie ever, because it actually got me to care about the human characters in its story, which is something that no other Godzilla film has actually been able to do. And since this movie acts as a remake of the 1954 original film anyway, it absolutely manages to stand on its own 2 feet, even in spite of the fact that the movie is a celebration of Godzilla's 70-year history. So you will love this movie if you are a fan of Godzilla, but you'll probably also love it if you're just a fan of films in general, because Godzilla Minus One is just that good, period. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Though I initially had mixed feelings about this trilogy capper, I have to admit that the movie has grown on me since I originally saw it. And I think that's because of how the story wraps up. On first viewing, all I could think about was how much more darker Guardians 3 was in comparison to the first 2 Guardians films. They were both pretty fun, entertaining, and easygoing kind of movies, but Guardians 3 was bleak and depressing and even hard to watch at times. But now, when I think about the movie, all I can think about is how the film does end on a happy, uplifting, and positive note. Because the final few minutes of this movie are probably my favorite final minutes of any movie from 2023. That finale just puts a big stupid smile on my face every time I watch it, so I think the journey that the Guardians ultimately face here was necessary in order to get them to this specific conclusion. And sure, I still have some issues with the movie as a whole, but that finale gives the film a tremendous amount of much needed heart, which does fill me up with joy, so I can't deny that Volume 3 is definitely a solid and satisfying conclusion to James Gunn's Guardians trilogy. John Wick Chapter 4. Definitely my favorite entry in the John Wick series. Chapter 4 has some of the best action sequences that any Hollywood blockbuster has to offer. The scope is huge, the action is epic, the choreography is mind-blowing, the visual effects are awe-inspiring, the music is great, and the cinematography is absolutely beautiful, and all of that adds up to make one of the best action films that I've ever seen in my entire life. Sure, the story may have blown out of proportion at this point, and I can understand how some people would be turned off by the non-stop over-the-top action, but everything works for me personally. So I'm just glad that I got the chance to experience this wonderful and glorious action spectacle in theaters, and I hope that future action films can prove to be more like this one. Knock at the Cabin. I know I'm the only person who has this movie on their top 10 list, but I can't deny that the film has just stuck with me ever since I first watched it. I love the performances, I love how ambiguous the story is, I love how there are so many different ways to interpret what is happening in the story, but I also love M. Night Shyamalan's visual aesthetic here. Because not only do I think that this is Shyamalan's best movie in years, but I also think it's one of his best looking films ever. So while some people may find the plot to be underwhelming or overly religious or not so scary, I found it to be entertaining and even rather thought-provoking. Which means that, from now on, when I think of Shyamalan's best work, not only will I be thinking of The Sixth Sense, or Signs, or Unbreakable, but I will also be thinking about Knock at the Cabin as well. Nyad. A late addition to this list, as I only heard about this movie following the Oscar nominations of Annette Bening and Jodie Foster back in January. Nyad is a solid sports film that really stands apart from other sports dramas. Though, due to the niche subject matter, the characterizations of the real-life people involved with this story, and the controversies that may surround Diana Nyad herself, I understand why this movie may not work for everyone, but I am personally glad that I did eventually discover this flick, because I found Nyad to be a unique and uplifting little biopic. Oppenheimer. As a huge fan of Christopher Nolan, I'm incredibly happy to see how successful Oppenheimer has been, because the fact that a 3-hour-long, dialogue-heavy, R-rated biopic that features a non-linear narrative, with segments that are shot in black and white, ended up being a huge hit with critics and audiences alike, and almost made $1 billion at the box office, is absolutely insane to me. Even as a Nolan fan myself, I never expected the movie to be this successful, especially since it isn't even my favorite Nolan film. Because I do have some issues with the movie. It's terribly long, it has an unnecessarily large cast, it features so many characters that I can't keep track of who is who and why they may be important at what time frame, but even with all of those complaints, I can't deny that this is a movie that I think about a lot, probably because of the terrifying real-world implications that this story has. So even if I won't look back at Oppenheimer as one of my favorite Nolan films, I have to admit that this is probably his most important and socially relevant film to date. And finally, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Easily my favorite movie of last year, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is a visual masterpiece unlike anything that I've ever seen before. Every single frame of this film is like a piece of art, and that feels incredibly rewarding as a Spider-Man fan, since every frame of this movie is a celebration of Spider-Man history. And while the movie may be jam-packed with an unnecessary amount of deep-cutting references and Easter eggs, Across the Spider-Verse still manages to be a really damn good film on its own. Sure, it may technically end on a cliffhanger, but the story being told here is quite satisfying in its own right. Because as much as I liked the original Spider-Verse movie, I happen to like this sequel a lot more. This is a visually dazzling movie that outshines its predecessor in just about every aspect. I love the direction, the animation, the story, the characters, the narrative arcs, and everything else in between, which means that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has everything that a Spider-Man fan or film fan in general could ever ask for. And that's exactly why it happens to be my favorite film of last year. So those were all of my favorite movies from 2023. I know I took way too long in sorting this list together, so hopefully I'll have an easier time when making my best of 2024 list. But I guess only time will tell if that will actually be the case. So until then, as always, thanks for watching.